As a creative aspect, TV is one of the best things that we do as a species. Along with music and film and books, they bring out the best creative of all of us. They entertain and they bring so much joy to many. They invoke emotion and enable us to feel things that we bury sometimes deep down. That's what this podcast is for. Welcome to A Million Little TV Shows. This is what I call the breakdown while I break down. Each week I will go through a different TV show, a different season of that TV show, and different episodes of that show. And I will break down not only emotions, but I will break down stories from my life, and let you know why these TV shows mean so much to me, and why I believe that they are some of the most important shows out there. This podcast is here to highlight a lot of smaller TV shows, or TV shows that don't really get a platform, because we know of a bunch of TV shows that get a multitude of different podcasts. Ted Lasso, Game of Thrones, The Office, they've all got several podcasts out there analysing all types of different things. But there's not many out there for the little guy, and that's what I'm trying to highlight. So each week I will go through a different show, different seasons, different episodes, and I will go across all different kinds of genres and different countries to bring you what I believe is some of the best TV out there. So I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you're here for this journey. And if you've watched the shows before and you wanted to come here and get an analysis on them and have someone go through them and pick out bits that you might have enjoyed, then I'm glad you are here. If, however, you have never watched the show and you just want to come and have someone talk in your ear about different TV shows, I'm glad you are here. But I hope that it inspires some people to go and seek out these TV shows. They deserve to be watched. They were made with love and care, and they are the same as this podcast, made with love and care. I am your host, Mike, and I will take you through every adventure, every horror, every piece of drama, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now episode 4 of season 11, and today we're going to be going back into the post-apocalyptic world of Miracle Workers. Now, this season so far has been so funny, and it's just going to get better. Again, I know I mentioned it a lot last episode, but John Bass's outfit in this whole thing is fucking ridiculous, and I can't remember if we get an explanation for it, but I really want one. However, I am just enjoying this show so much. I think everyone in it is just brilliant, and they don't take themselves too seriously, but while not taking themselves too seriously, they're kind of taking it serious. So it's very deadpan, very slapstick, very droll, and it's just the kind of humour that I kind of enjoy. Especially with the world in the state that it's in, it's just nice to have that release, that kind of ridiculousness, and just overall fun. So I can't wait to get back into it. So that's what I'm going to do. But thank you for being here. I hope you're all doing well, and thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. Please, if you haven't, go do it, because it means a lot to me. And it means I get to do more with the podcast. But let's get into this. So, this is Miracle Workers, the final season, season 4, episodes 4 to 7. Episode 4, The Grouping Ceremony. So as we know, Sid is now working for Morris, and he seems to be sort of a trusted employee of Morris's. However, at this point, Morris is kind of exploiting that fact, and is occasionally making him work when he isn't actually being paid for it. So when Sid tries to discuss this with him, they're all of a sudden interrupted by loud music. It turns out that Morris actually has a child. I say a child, he's very much a teenager at this point. He calls for his son, Timmy, and Timmy comes through. Timmy has 2 heads, because of the toxic wasteland that he lives in, but also apparently he was born from a toxic relationship. And it seems that there is a grouping ceremony coming up, which is a little bit like in Harry Potter with the sorting ceremony, and a little bit like in Divergence when they actually get sorted into their own teams. Now Morris wants his son Timmy to go into the same team that he went into, which was Strong. However, he's unsure whether Timmy will actually get in there, and he is uninterested in any of the other teams in this sorting ceremony. So it seems like he will be disappointed if Timmy ends up in anything else. But since he's so worried about it, he asks Sid whether he'll be able to help him, because it seems that Sid, even though he's lived in the Wastelanders and never done this ceremony before, is very strong. And so he asks Sid whether he will train Timmy to actually be strong, or at least gain a strong grade on his actual test, which is basically a multi-choice exercise, and essentially will guide them to where they need to be. However, when Sid actually assesses Timmy, it turns out that Timmy's heroic. Every answer he gives is heroic. But Morris isn't having any of it. He wants his son to be in strong, and that is the only thing that he wants. He wants him to follow in his dad's footsteps, which is obviously going to be a bone of contention for the boy because he doesn't want to disappoint his father, but also he just wants to be his own man. And so Morris, against his son's wishes, decides that he's going to rig the game. And honestly, sometimes I think this program cannot get any stupider. And then I watch this episode and I go, yeah, it's pretty fucking stupid. And so they go and see some sort of high commissioner at this sorting ceremony. While they're there, they talk to this woman and Morris tries to bribe her. Sid is backing down from this. He's like, no, I don't think this is a good idea. But Morris is going full steam ahead. He keeps upping his offer, and each time he's told, no, that's not how this is going to work. Eventually, he goes way above and beyond, and the commissioner decides to take the bribe. As the $1 Million Man used to say, everybody has their price. And so Morris comes up with a real plan. He draws it out overnight, and then presents it to Sid in the morning. However, it's in crayon, so it looks like a child has drawn it, and it is ridiculous. Essentially what they're going to do is Sid and Morris are going to dress up as his son, and his son is then going to take a test elsewhere, thinking that he's took the test, and that even though Sid and Morris have took it for him. So now they need a teacher. And so they decide to use Scraps, even though Scraps at this point is literally laying on the ground and doing what all dogs do when they fart in the sun. Not that they have to fart in the sun, just fart in general, but he's laying in the sun. And he rolls over and starts saying, who farted, and then realises that it was him. So, yeah, it's not exactly the best person to pick as a teacher who thinks he's a dog. Just a little side note on that, at the beginning of the episode, when he's actually waiting around for Freya to wake up, he is singing a song, and he doesn't understand where this song comes from, or why he's heard it before, but the song basically goes that he is not a dog, he's a man, and that his captors have brainwashed him into thinking he's a dog, and that he should kill them all and go back to his old life. And then he can't figure out why this song is in his head. So we think we've got a little bit more answer to why he is a dog. It's because he's been brainwashed. However, he ends up agreeing to be the teacher for Timmy, while Morris and Sid go off and take the official test. As they do, Morris is freaking out. He keeps thinking that everyone's looking at him, and he just cannot sit still. All he's got to do is just sit there and do nothing. Sid is going to do all the work, and he just cannot conceive of what to do. Eventually, they finish the test, and Timmy gets into strong, as his father wanted. But the way that they will now test them, or the way that they will now be working, is by smashing rocks for the rest of their lives, or at least, I would assume, until they do something different. Because obviously we know that Morris was in strong before, and that is how he used to live, and then he started doing something different, being this scrapper merchant. And so Morris goes and visits his son at the quarry, where he is meant to be smashing rocks. There's all these other strong guys around him, moving these rocks around and doing what they need to do, but Timmy is nowhere to be seen, until Morris calls out for him, and then he realises that he's literally stuck under a rock. Morris helps him out and tells his son that he needs to not be ashamed that he isn't strong, that he loves him all the same, and that he's still proud of him, and that he has a confession to make, because his son doesn't want to be there. His son is a different person to him, and he just didn't want to disappoint his father. They go back to the High Commissioner, and Morris tells Timmy the truth, but the Commissioner isn't happy with this and pulls a gun on Morris. And this is where Timmy springs into action and proves that he is heroic, because he ends up taking out the High Commissioner and making sure that she doesn't hurt his father. So it proves that he is truly heroic. As for Freya, she wakes up and she has had a brutal hangover because, well, she's been partying with Ty. Let's not forget, Ty is a machine, a literal machine. He is basically a Terminator, and Freya is human. And not only is she human, she is getting older. She's also been living this domestic life recently, and now she's out partying, and, I mean, anyone who is over 25 knows exactly how it feels. Like, you used to be able to go out and do as many parties as you wanted, and you could be out all night and walk home at ridiculous hours and eat whatever the fuck you wanted, and it just didn't matter. Now, I mean, I'm 42 this year, and yeah, it's not happening. I cannot do all that shit. I very rarely drink anymore, and it's, yeah, you just feel it in your bones. Even thinking about it now, I'm like, no, I couldn't do that again. The odd time of drinking is fine, but yeah, I couldn't constantly go out. And of course, she's trying to compete with a literal machine, but she doesn't want to be classed as boring and old. And sometimes you've just got to accept that. You've just got to accept that you aren't the person that you were, that you've evolved, that you've become better. Because as fun as all that is, it's a learning curve. And once you get past that, you can start doing other things, more interesting things, less expensive things in some cases. But yeah, it's a very interesting contrast between how Sid lives his life, because he essentially just sits at home and just chills out for the night, and the way that Freya is, which is trying to be that party girl that she was before. Eventually, after a really heavy night out and the fact that she basically ends up dying. In the middle of her funeral, she wakes back up and Ty is there. He essentially tells her that she died and that he was just going to go back out and party after he'd done this funeral. She says she can't do this anymore and that she's just going to stay in from now on because it's just not fun anymore. She's waking up with hangovers and feeling rough, and what's the point of it all? Ty feels disappointed, but he just leaves her to it, and she goes home. That night she curls up with Sid and realises that actually being at home's not that bad. It's pretty easy and it's pretty fun, and you don't have to just be out all night drinking and trying to keep up with the youth. Who fucking needs it? Episode 5, Jim Carrey in the Park. So Freya and Ty are meant to be going away for the weekend because since Freya has actually started to live the life of domesticity that she didn't want, but has now started to embrace, her and Ty are going away for the weekend. It's just going to be them, or at least that's what Ty thinks. However, Sid comes through with a bindle and says that he's ready to go. Earlier on in the episode, however, we saw that Morris is putting on a play and Scraps wants to actually be part of it. The play is Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. And so Scraps says that he wants to go up for the lead, and Freya has already told him that she would take him. So Scraps at this point is more like their child than an actual dog. He's begging his mum, basically, to take him to this audition. And so she says she can't disappoint her boy and that Sid and Ty are going to have to go together. Now, at this point, Sid and Ty are always at odds. They don't seem to like each other, or at least Ty doesn't seem to like Sid. However, they're going off to this bunker and they're going to spend the weekend together. Once they get to the bunker, however, Sid realises that Ty, with him being an android, is actually one of many. There are many clones of Ty, and they all sit down together. However, Sid always gets mocked by Ty whenever they're around, and Ty continues this with all his friends. So now it ends up being 5 Tys picking on Sid. But also, since they're robots, they're getting high in their own way. And that includes using magnets and eventually hardlining by plugging themselves into a landline. But because Ty is so disappointed with the fact that Freya's not going to be turning up due to this play, he starts taking it out on Sid. And also starts taking it out on his own body. Sid finds him just as he's about to hardline, and he can't manage to stop him, but Ty ends up short-circuiting when, of course, he's attached to a landline. So, of course, as he's lunging towards Sid, the landline pulls him back, he ends up falling over some pillows and falling into a shower. And with him being an android, he ends up short-circuiting. After turning the water off, Sid has the brilliant idea to actually cover him in rice, because that's what people used to do back in the day, of course. I'm sure there's many people out there that have dropped their phone in the toilet or dropped their phone in the shower or wherever it is and ended up needing that exact method. And in the hopes of drying him out, Sid and the rest of the Tys, I suppose, end up actually praying for him. Eventually he manages to come round and is fine. He tells Sid that he's not half bad, and he's been blaming Sid because of the fact that Freya's been changed since she met him. But Ty realises that's not Sid's fault. It's his fault for expecting too much from her now that she's in a happy, healthy relationship. And that maybe it's Ty that needs to change. The rest of the Ties think that Sid is still a dick, so it doesn't really balance it out, but at least he's got the one Ty that counts on side. However, like I say, the reason that Freya can't come to this is because Morris is putting on this play. Scraps goes up for the lead role, but he doesn't understand the premise. He thinks that it is a pet detective, so he is playing a dog being a detective, but turns out that that's not obviously what it is. When he tries to act like a human, he's totally forgot because he doesn't remember his human life. So he ends up not getting the part. At this point, however, Morris is looking for someone with passion, and Freya has ended up in an argument with a man because she is sat on his car. She flips out on him, and when she tries to throw up on his windshield because she's stolen his window wipers and then can't, so tries to take a crap on there, Morris realises that he's got his Ace Ventura right there. He casts her in the lead role, and she starts going down a dark hole with it. She essentially does what Jim Carrey did when he played Andy Kaufman. She starts going down a dark, deep hole and cannot come out of it. She literally turns into Ace Ventura, taking on his mannerisms, and even dressing like him when she's not playing the part. Morris starts to recognise this and realises that this isn't the first time this has happened. Whenever he's tried this before, the other people who played Ace have gone down the same path. It's taken over their life, and he's never seen them again. And so he knows what to do. He needs to tie her up because she needs to get out of this mode. If he goes and plays the part himself, then hopefully she won't be infected and she can go back to her old life. She convinces Scraps to actually help her out and untie her. And when he does, she goes to the stage and she plays the part brilliantly. However, at the end, the lights go out, and when the lights come back on, she's gone. Scraps and Morris go out to the desert starting to look for her and find her at a particular spot. She is literally stood on the edge of a cliff, and she tells them that she's okay now. She takes off the Hawaiian shirt and throws it over the edge, saying, "Alrighty then." And she seems to be okay. However, as the shirt flutters to the ground, we actually discover what happened to all the other aces, because they've ended up coming to the same spot and throwing themselves off. So that's why Morris was so worried when he actually found her. And this just shows that that domestic role that she's taken up has started to affect her a little bit. She didn't want all that. She wanted to be this adventurous girl, and now she's not even able to go out on a weekend with her friend because she just can't hack it anymore. And so she needs to fill her life in a different way. And in all fairness, drama is a good way to start. She could start a podcast, for instance. That's what I ended up doing. But she's managed to find something that gives her passion, but sometimes we find it all too encompassing. And sometimes it ends up being an unhealthy lifestyle to a lead. And we notice that she found that in this particular episode. But at least her best friend and her husband are now starting to get on, so hopefully there'll be more adventures there and she can leave the acting in the past. Episode 6, Olympus. So Freya and Sid are having some work done at home due to the fact that they are hearing noises in the wall and it's driving them crazy, but also driving Scraps crazy. Turns out though that there aren't rats in the wall, there are feral children, and this is something that only an expert can deal with. Of course, the problem is money, as always. Freya doesn't know how she's going to afford these payments, and obviously Sid's in the same boat. Warlording hasn't been so great for her recently, and Sid is working for Morris. And so just when she thinks she's down on her luck and that she isn't enjoying life anymore, especially this domestic life, again, that she didn't want, she gets a phone call. It's from her mother and father, and they say that they're going to be in town soon, and that they'd like to come and see her. Sid didn't even realise that her parents were still alive, and so he's excited to meet his in-laws. Freya, however, just doesn't want anything to do with these people. Not that they're bad people, just that she got away from that life for a reason. Of course, it turns out that Freya is from virtual royalty, and her parents are mega rich. They live on a floating island, and when this floats overhead, Sid can't believe what he's seeing. It's also called Olympus, so we all know about the Greek gods, and we can imagine this is their version of them being gods. They turn up, and instantly they start running down the house. They want Freya to come back and be with them, and when they see the kind of life that she's living, they're a little disappointed by it. They don't want to stay with them, and so they offer Freya and Sid to come up to Olympus with them. Once up there, Sid is in his element. He cannot believe the life that she led and that she left behind to become a warlord. Freya just wants to get the visit over and done with and just go back to her normal life. But Sid is embracing every single element of it, which frustrates Freya a little bit because she thought that they were building a good life together. During a huge party for Freya's return, it turns out that Freya isn't exactly the warlord that she thought she was either when she meets another guy who basically just someone she could have turned into. A rich little toff that has been born with a silver spoon in his mouth and has inherited a lot of wealth and therefore has been able to take over the Golden City, as he calls it, and have monuments built there in his honour, which Freya seems a little bit put out by. She's been doing okay for herself as a warlord, but nothing to the extent of the Golden City. But she keeps just taking it out on her mother. And so when she goes to see Sid and talks to him about what the hell's going on, he says, why aren't we staying here? Why don't we just see how this goes? Because her mother wants her to live back in Olympus again. She's taken aback by what Sid says, but she takes it under consideration. She realises that she's been a little bit too harsh on her mother and her father, and she goes and speaks to her mother. Her father at this point is a little bit busy with Sid, who is pretending to be his puppet. Literally a puppet. When she speaks to her mother, however, she gets some chilling news. She tells her that they're going to consider staying because it just makes sense now. And when she's told, well, that's good because your father really likes Sid and he really likes his organs, Freya doesn't understand what she means. Turns out that Sid is going to be harvested for all his organs because Freya's father needs them. When Freya heads off to go and find Sid, she finds him in an operating theatre. He's already having organs removed, and Freya grabs hold of him and gets him out of there. They grab Scraps on the way out, who has also had his own little storyline where he has been shown up by the elite dogs that actually live upon this planet, and he is a little bit jealous of how they are, and so he has tried to change himself to fit in with them. But of course he's always going to be a mongrel. And when Freya and Sid leave, he leaves with them. Morris, however, has had his own little adventure. He needs to sort something out at home because he's got a ball pit in his dodgy burger restaurant. And when the person comes over to fix it, it turns out it's Ty. Now, Morris doesn't like robots because he believes they're non-humans, and he has some animosity towards him. Of course, last time he saw him, he was bailing Freya out and shooting up this restaurant that they're in. So he's pissed off Morris. He eventually manages to do some work for Morris after they come to an agreement. But when he finds the toe of the dead girl that Morris slept with at his graduation or his high school reunion, it means Holly ends up walking out on him. Morris gets depressed and can't believe that he's so down on his luck, and it turns out that Ty is the perfect person to be there and to bring him out of this. They manage to talk and manage to get some mutual feelings for each other going. Morris ends up drawing him very much like Kate Winslet in Titanic with Leo, and they have a romantic moment together. And it turns out that Morris has just misunderstood robots in the past, and now he's come to appreciate them. However, when he suggests that they should do it more often, Ty tells him that he's not sure he can do that, and they leave it as it is. But this could be a turning point for both of them, because they seem to have found a friendship with each other. So this may explain why Freya is the way that she is. Having parents like that, as overbearing as they are, she's ended up rebelling, and she's made that her whole life. So when she goes back to the thing that she forgot about, it turns out that they aren't nice people. And so maybe Freya is better off out of that world than she is in it, because it's not fair for her to have to adhere to their rules if that's not what she wants. And so I've seen people say that this is disconnected from the whole main storyline, but I think it's probably one of the more connected ones, because it explains who Freya is. It shows that detail of her life as to why she's turned into this warlord and what she's run away from. Episode 7, Roland Proudheart. And it's here that we actually get the origin of Scraps, and we find out who he actually is. Clues in the name of the episode, but as we start we see that Scraps is dressed in a bee costume, because Freya thinks that it's funny to dress him like this. Like most dog moms, when they find a cute little outfit for their pups, they put them in all ridiculous outfits, and do they look cute? Fucking yes, they do. However, this is a grown man who has been dressed in a gimp costume throughout and is now dressed as a bee. Not as cute. Cute, but not as cute. But when she heads back in to get a jar of honey, Scraps is kidnapped. he is taken to a village where he is reunited with his family. They call him Roland Proudheart, and he cannot believe the life that he used to lead. Again, he still thinks of himself as a dog. He's been brainwashed, after all, to believe that he is one and that he's just a pet. So he continues to do things like sit on the floor, and when he's asked what he wants to eat, he's astounded that he isn't just getting kibble. And so he manipulates the system by asking for things like ice cream, and he's really starting to enjoy what he previously had. However, as he is, Freya comes back into town. She knows exactly where he is because she's got a GPS tracker on him, and she finds him straight away. However, he isn't willing to give up his new life, or in fact his old life, just for Freya. And Freya is told by the villagers that she's now going to live her life as he had. They kidnap her and they turn her into their pet. However, now that Freya has no responsibilities and is free to basically do what she wants, she's a little bit happier with her life. She literally tells him that she can't believe he gets to pee out in public and not give a shit. And so now she can just go out and roam around and do what she wants to do. Within reason, she's still locked up, but she gets to go on walks and she gets to eat what she describes as not bad when it comes to the kibble she's eating. Whereas now, Scraps, as Roland, is having to do a normal person's work. He's having to look after his children, he's having to look after his family, he's having to work. He is a well-known figure within the town and he needs to look after his community as well. And it's all just getting a little bit too much for him. Very much like Freya would have felt when she was leading her troop. She was the leader, she was the one that they looked up to, and now she doesn't have any responsibility, whereas Roland is the one that the town looks up to, because he has gone against the witch Freya, as the village call her. And so now that he's seen how bad things have got, he decides that this probably isn't the life for him, but he's still revered in town, and Freya never really gave him the respect that he wanted. So he knows that he can make a go of this. Freya, however, by this point, has managed to steal his keys, because as much as she is enjoying the life of a dog, she also wants to burn the place to the ground. So she steals his keys and runs off. Eventually, they find out that she's gone, and Scraps knows exactly where she is. She's in the village square and she is about to burn the place to the ground. Of course, wouldn't be a comedy without them fucking it up somehow. She can't actually get a proper light on anything and none of it's going up. Scraps comes out and goes against her. She tells him that she didn't realise how miserable he was with her and that she thought that he liked being her pet. And if he doesn't feel like he can come back with her, then he doesn't have to. She's happy to leave him where he is and he can just stay and be the husband that he always should have been. And so he begins to think about what his life would be if he stays. He doesn't like that he has to work hard and he doesn't like that he can't just sit around all day. He thought that he would come back to this village a conquering hero, and it turns out that he's just not. He is a conquering hero, but nobody treats him as such. He wants the life that he had before and decides to leave with Freya. As for back in Boomtown, Sid ends up in trouble at work because he's having to catch the bus in because Freya has taken the only vehicle that they have. And so he decides that he's going to go and get another vehicle. He and Ty go together to try and find something, and each vehicle that they look at are just things that are on fire or things that are just dilapidated. Ty tells him, you need to get something really, really good. And then he sees it. It's called the Beefy. And essentially, it's a Tesla or a fucking cyber vehicle, a Cybertruck thing. But instead of being an actual vehicle, it's just a man. But it's one of those status symbols where everyone's got to have one, and then people who don't have one are jealous, and it's bullshit, in all fairness. A vehicle's a vehicle at the end of the day. It shouldn't be a status symbol, it should get you from A to B. But he doesn't see it as that, and it starts to go to his head. He starts to become one of those guys that thinks he's better than everybody else. And people start to revere him a little bit for the way that he is, until Ty actually points out that him having this vehicle is getting to his head a little bit. He's becoming one of those dumb idiots that just thinks that his car is the best thing that ever happened to him, when he's got an amazing woman around him and a pretty nice life. Okay, can things be better for them? Yeah, but where they are, it's pretty good. They've got a roof over their heads, they've got a car that works, and they have each other and the dog. But when Ty points this out, he tries to get away from Ty. He jumps on his vehicle, which is essentially getting on this guy's shoulders, who's just big and jacked, and this guy then runs off. Somehow Sid ends up in some sort of beast mode with this vehicle, and it runs off. He is then hanging on for dear life until he is basically pushed into a scrapyard. Ty gets in to save the day and tries to help Sid out. This involves him getting Sid off the vehicle, or off the human shoulders, and then a bunch of cars come crashing down on him in this scrapyard. And that is it. Sid realises the person that he was becoming he didn't like, and Ty vows to assist anyone who ends up in that situation from then on. Sid goes home and eventually Freya and Scraps turn up. He asks them about their day and they tell him exactly what happened in a very short version. They then tell him that they decimated the village and burnt it to the ground. He begins to ask about Scraps' family, and Scraps says, well, they obviously survived us burning the village down. Obviously they did. And they kind of just laugh it off and walk away. And it's here that Sid tells them that this is probably the darkest thing that they've done. And where I agree, I also think that the whole thing with the postman in the last one was really the darkest thing I've seen from this whole show. It was so menacing and was so unnecessary, but ultimately hilarious. Such a great 4 episodes that I've just watched. Okay, so this is always fun. This is such a fun show to watch, and there are stupid bits within it that I just can't help laughing at. But I think at the end of the day, it is done with so much love and heart that it doesn't matter about the daftness within it. It's the overall arching story that makes it worth watching. And that seems to be about the relationships that are built along the way. Now, because they didn't really know each other until the start of this series, you can see how everyone has started to get along. Now, Freya obviously knew Ty and Scraps, but they were part of her inner circle. Since then, she has managed to embrace Sid and, to some extent, Morris. But obviously, Morris is more a character around Sid, and now around Ty. So the connections that they're all making together, it's really making this show interesting, and also helps give a little bit of context to who these people are. We now understand Roland, or Scraps, a little bit better, because he seems to be a little bit like John Bass's characters in any of the other series. He's quite lazy and doesn't want to do a lot. Especially last season, he was very lazy, rich, and just wanted to have everything handed to him on a plate. Whereas in this season, okay, he's a war dog, but he doesn't want that responsibility, he doesn't want the family. And then you've got Freya. She's becoming more and more domesticated as time goes on. She's losing a bit of a warlord status, and we don't know if she's going to go back to that at any point. But we now know where she comes from. We understand why she is the way that she is. We also understand from the last episode that I did a little bit more about Morris and the fact that he was bullied in school, and only through having sex with the skeleton of the woman he used to fancy way back in high school does he feel like he has elevated himself. The only one we don't really understand at this particular moment is Sid. We don't really know where he came from. We know that he keeps telling us he's got no parents, but what does that mean? Where did he actually come from? And don't say, well, it means he's got no parents. I know that, but where did they go? So there's a few things to still answer. We don't know whether Freya's going to go back to her old life and leave Boomtown with Sid, or whether they're going to stay and live the domestic life that they have before. But I suppose at this point they're still finding out where they fit into this entire world. Oddly enough, we all still are. And even if you think you've got it sorted, you don't always. But I'm really enjoying this show. Really think it's funny, daft, very much my sense of humour. Just something you can just put on and enjoy for what it is. There doesn't have to be massive amount of deep meaning to it, and yes, I know I've just done a monologue about the massive amounts of deep meaning behind it, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be something you can put on and enjoy. And as much as I've seen about the last 2 episodes when it comes to them not matching the storyline, I think they do. I think that getting to know Freya and why she basically came away from her family and did the things that she did to become the warlord that she is, they mean something. And also Scraps, the fact that he was taken and people thought that he'd fought this warlord, but actually he'd just become her slave. And then over time had decided that it's not half bad, this dog life. I can sit around and do nothing all day until my master wants me to come out. She doesn't beat me, she feeds me, she looks after me, she cares for me. It's not like I'm an actual slave, so why wouldn't I? And so, yeah, I think having that context as to who these people are really makes this show a little bit more relatable. But anyway, I'm sure you guys will let me know what you think in the comments if that's your thing. But I'm done for today. We're going to pick this up in 2 weeks and we will conclude the whole show. But as for today, I'm done. I hope you're all doing well out there. And until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye. As always, thank you for listening to this podcast, and you could really help me and the podcast by giving a like, share, subscribe on all major platforms that you listen to podcasts on. As an independent podcaster, this will just help me exponentially when it comes to actually doing more things with this podcast. I truly do enjoy this, and I absolutely love revisiting these TV shows with you guys. So any engagement from you is always welcome, and I will try and listen to all of you when you give suggestions or just tell me what you think about the podcast. But once again, thank you for listening, and until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye.